Welcome everyone to the environment breakout session for the PA AV Summit. My name's Emily Watts. I'm an executive policy specialist with PennDOT, and I'll be serving as your moderator today for this panel. I'm really excited as we've been prepping for our panel and meeting our panelists. They have a lot of great insight and are working on a lot of really interesting projects. So yeah, let's a few housekeeping items before we get started. So you're all aware this session will be recorded and will be available to attendees later this year. You will also see that your microphone has been automatically muted to reduce background noise, but please feel free to use the chat function. It is on your right-hand side of your screen for general conversation and comments, and then please use the Q&A section to ask questions about the presentations. And then you can always upvote the questions that you really want answered by the panelists. Our plan for this panel is each of the panelists, we have 3, will provide about a 10-minute conversation and presentation for you. And then we're hoping to have like 25 minutes of Q&A and discussion. So a lot of engagement with our panelists here. So our first panelist speaker today is Yeganeh Hayeri. She's at the Stevens Institute of Technology as assistant professor. And just so you're all aware, full bios for all the speakers are available in the Summit program and then on the Summit website. So Yeganeh, please take it away.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, there we go. Guys, hear me okay? I'm not hearing any feedback.
You're loud and clear.
Very well. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yeganeh Hayeri. I'm a faculty at the School of Systems and Enterprises at Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey, in Hoboken, New Jersey. Glad to be here. Glad to see some familiar names on the list of participants. So I'll be talking about optimizing automated vehicles, energy and environmental impacts. This is the result of this research project, which has been ongoing for the past 7 years, is a collective energy optimal adaptive cruise control algorithm that's based on artificial intelligence, specifically deep learning and car following models. Next, please. Thank you. So the motivation is perhaps familiar to all of us. The public is demanding for action when it comes to climate change. Transportation sector is the largest producer of greenhouse gas emissions. And as such, the aim of this research is to aid policymakers, decision makers in general, automakers, consumers in understanding how automated vehicles could impact the environment and to provide policy recommendations and technical solutions. Next, please. So what you see in front of you is showing you the scope of this, again, 7-year project. The first box on the left-hand side, upper left-hand, is was focused on analyzing low-level automated vehicles' energy and emission impacts. This is the work that started 7 years ago when I was still at Carnegie Mellon University. We started this part when data was really scarce in terms of automated vehicles. And what we have been doing over the last 7 years is continuously updating this portion of the project so that we have better results, more accurate results, and more with the availability of data. The second box, upper right side, as the next portion of this project where we focused on developing car following models, and I'll get into that a little bit today. And those two really came helping us to develop the collective energy optimal adaptive cruise control system. Next, please. So in terms of the project that started 7 years ago and is continuously being updated, we wanted to focus on low-level automated vehicles, everything and anything that's available to us today in our cars, things that have that used to be, at least 7 years ago, more of luxury technologies, but today is more of a mainstream. Lane departure warning, active braking, blind spot warning, dynamic route guidance, adaptive cruise control, cooperative adaptive cruise control. So everything and anything in this project that I'm presenting today is dealing with low-level automated vehicles. And then later on, in the following slides, you will see that we move to what we will probably see in the next 2 decades at least, which is the mixed fleet. We wanted to focus on the messy world. We didn't want to really focus on the ideal, the optimal scenario. What's happening 50 years down the road is not the focus of this project. The focus of this project has always been what we have today and what's coming up, knowing that the conventional vehicles will be there, they're there, will remain there, and we will be interacting with them through this new technology known as automated vehicles or connected automated vehicles. So keep that in mind, please, throughout the presentation. This is sort of like a short-term to medium-term project timeline. So energy and emission impacts in terms of these technologies, level 0 to level 2 automation. The list is in front of you. Next slide, please. Jumping into results. What you see on the left-hand side and the y-axis showing you percent energy saving potentials for each of the technologies, anything from lane departure warning to blind spot warning to dynamic route guidance and so on and so forth. What probably catches your eyes is that cooperative adaptive cruise control, parking aid system, dynamic route guidance is giving us most of the potential in terms of energy savings. This was true 7 years ago. This is still true with the current data and the data being updated. On the right-hand side is the translation of the percent energy saving potentials in terms of environmental savings. Again, pretty much consistent with what you see on the left-hand side in terms of CO2, particulate matters, carbon monoxide, NOx, VOC. Again, cooperative adaptive cruise control, parking system, and dynamic route guidance is what's giving us most of the savings, most of the benefits. So overall, today we see that low-level automated vehicles could save up to $20 billion annually in the social cost of the emissions, and that means the cost of mortality, morbidity, and environmental damages. Next slide, please. Driving an identical low-level automated vehicle leads to different amounts of emission savings in different urban areas, depending on geography, traffic condition, engine performance. What you're seeing here in front of you is a map that shows you the same technology would result in a different benefit if you have that car in Los Angeles versus Pittsburgh, versus somewhere in Florida or Texas. So the technology is the same, but depending where you are and when you drive, where you're driving that car, and depending on the traffic conditions and engine performance, the result and the benefit that we get is significantly different. So for instance, the adaptive cruise control, cooperative adaptive cruise control would show us most benefits in Los Angeles. Parking management systems or route guidance, which would give us most benefit in New York area. Next slide, please. So knowing what new, especially with adaptive cruise control and cooperative adaptive cruise control, and the potential that these technologies would give us in terms of energy savings, we thought we want to focus on those two specifically. We knew that classic car following models assume drivers' behavior only impacted by their leading vehicles. That's what we have been practicing. That's what the practitioners have been using. All our traffic models and simulations up to recent has been focusing on only two cars, the subject vehicle and the leading vehicle. All of us who drive know that that is far from the reality. When we drive, we are actually impacted by surrounding vehicles. Our decisions are impacted, and we make decisions based on the car that's next to us and based on the car that's in front of us and also the car that's behind us. All of these come together collectively. So having that in mind, we use a data set known as next generation simulation data set, and we basically used artificial intelligence and machine learning tools, and specifically deep learning algorithms, to basically see which one of these vehicles are impacting us while we're driving and using adaptive cruise control or cooperative adaptive cruise control most. Is it the vehicle in front of us, or the one to the right-hand side, left-hand side, and so on and so forth? What's happening in HOV lanes? And more specifically, we wanted to know which of the algorithms in terms of machine learning would give us the most accurate results. So I'm not going to go into much detail, obviously. Well, I have a very short period of time for this presentation, but 5 different algorithms within the deep learning realm were exercised. Next slide, please. And the 2 of the algorithms specifically gave us the best results in terms of predictions, in terms of which cars would have most impacts, and how we can optimize the decision and behavioral decisions, and specifically when we are driving our cars using adaptive cruise control. So we thought we can use this, the algorithm that gave us most accuracy, and bring this into this whole energy and environmental impact realm. And see how the mixed fleet would work, doing some predictions. And the results were fascinating. So the new algorithm that we have that basically gives us the benefits of this new collective adaptive cruise control, we call it. It's different than adaptive cruise control. It's different than cooperative adaptive cruise control. It's collective, meaning that it optimizes for a subject vehicle with respect to the mixed fleet, all the cars surrounding it, regardless of the level of automation that the other cars are having. And the results were amazing. We saw that when all vehicles in the simulations were the same type, we could see the average fuel consumption. On the left-hand side, you see the unit is liters per 100 kilometers, would go down from the manual car to SACC, which is our self-center adaptive cruise control, which is basically the cars that currently have adaptive cruise control, and compared to what we have, collective adaptive cruise control. So we see significant savings there, from 7 to 8 liters per 100 kilometers down to about 4 liters per 100 kilometers. And on the right-hand side, we are showing the results of the same algorithm, but this time we have mixed traffic flow as opposed to the same type of traffic flow. So again, we see quite an improvement with respect to market penetration rate, which is what you see on the x-axis. Market penetration of 0% all the way to 75% of collective adaptive cruise control would give us significant savings if we consider mixed fleet as opposed to self-centered adaptive cruise control. Next slide, please. Translation from what we saw with energy consumption using collective adaptive cruise control to the environmental impacts. Again, across the board, we see improvements as the market penetration goes up. CO2, NOx, CO, and particulate matters. Obviously we need, the more we have in the market, and I'm not talking only about automated vehicles, but this particular collective adaptive cruise control, the higher the energy savings and the consequential impacts and the emissions would be. Next slides, please. You can just click and click and click away. Go for it. Thank you. So in conclusion, low-level automated vehicle owners could save 6 to 23%, equal to $60 to $260 annually, saving up to $20 billion annually in the social cost of the emissions. Adaptive cruise control, cooperative adaptive cruise control, dynamic route guidance, and parking aid systems have the highest fuel saving capabilities. Again, we have been seeing this for the past 7 years, and it continues to be so. Driving an identical low-level automated vehicles leads to different amounts of emission savings in different urban areas. from the machine learning perspective, when we compared deep recurrent neural networks, this particular algorithm had significantly outperformed all other machine learning algorithms in the deep learning models that we have used. So that's the one that we continued with. And that's how we constructed our collective adaptive cruise control algorithm, which reduces fuel consumption by 49% and 42% respectively compared to manual driving and self-centered adaptive cruise control, which is what we see in the market now. Translating that to the environmental factors, we see 54%, 70%, 58%, and 64% reductions for CO2, CO, NOx, and PM. Next slide, please. So you can click away. Thank you. Thank you. So what do all of these mean in terms of real world application and policy recommendations? This project is, again, it's been a long-term project. This project serves as a comprehensive source for low-level automated vehicles, location-specific energy impacts for policymakers and environmental advocates. The positive impacts increase by the market penetration rate. This should sort of help or sort of like give the idea to the authorities to promote targeted adoption of these technologies depending on different geographic areas. The project aids researchers and developers to select right inputs and modeling approaches using machine learning. Not every machine learning algorithm we showed and it's published that gives us enough accuracy for this type of work. The collective adaptive cruise control is a marketable technology, and it comes with a substantial energy emission and public health benefits. Last but not the least, it could be highly beneficial to the society, but as always, we require government incentives to facilitate quick adoptions. Thank you so much. I know I ran through this very quickly, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeganeh, that was very quick, and there's a lot of great information there. So looking forward to some Q&A. So participants, don't forget to ask your questions in the Q&A section of the chat on the right-hand side. So next up, we have Nathaniel Horadam. He is, oh my goodness, I lost my thing. All right, so he is a managing consultant and AV consultant for the Center for Transportation and the Environment. Nathaniel, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let me make sure the screen share works.
And Yeganeh, you can turn off your camera until we're ready for some discussion. Take it away.
And can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, well, hello everyone. Good afternoon. I'm actually in LA right now, so technically good morning, but great to be here with you virtually. As Emily said, I'm Nathaniel Horadam. I'm a managing consultant and automated vehicle specialist at CTE, Center for Transportation and the Environment. Brief overview of who we are. For those of y'all who haven't heard of us, we are a national nonprofit based in Atlanta with a few offices around the country. Primarily supporting the development and commercialization of clean energy technologies for transportation with a heavy focus on medium and heavy duty vehicles. So primarily buses and trucks, which is what I'm going to be talking to you about specifically as it relates to automation. So, why transit automation? Why do we need to automate buses? Why not invest in just better service or more service across the board? Well, obviously, like everyone else that talks about benefits of automated vehicle technology, we want to improve on-road safety. Bus collisions are rare, but they do happen. And also, what I'll be speaking about specifically as it relates to a project I'm working on, ADA accessibility for platform boarding. Improved driver performance. I'm really glad that I got to follow Yeganeh there, because all of those things she talked about in terms of low-level automation, energy benefits or energy efficiency increases apply, increasingly so when you've got vehicles that are an order of magnitude heavier than light vehicles. So we see that as a benefit potentially, and certainly improve driver performance where they're not having to be engaged for what are really grueling, sometimes 10 to 12 hour, operating cycles. Also see a number of reduced barriers to specifically battery electric bus adoption in terms of the charging infrastructure footprint required at yards, and also from those efficiency gains, potentially extending the range of vehicles and allowing agencies to procure and replace their diesel and their legacy diesel and CNG vehicles faster. And then when you start talking about platooning, the value proposition for buses is quite a bit different than it is for trucks. These vehicles typically aren't operating at very high speeds. The project I'm working on in Connecticut is a bit of a different situation, but buses are designed like bricks. There are no aerodynamic efficiencies there, and so the potential fuel savings from platooning are less. But if you can replace the capacity of a 60-foot bus with two, 30, 35, 40-foot buses, then you have greater fleet flexibility because you don't need to deploy the 60-footers. You can deploy those 35 and 40-footers anywhere. And then also you could possibly even replicate without increasing the number of drivers or operators on your vehicle. You could have the capacity of a light rail system with multiple cars linked together. So the project that I'm working on, and I think the reason I'm speaking to y'all today more than anything, is we won a grant with the Connecticut Department of Transportation, New Flyer, Robotic Research, who's New Flyer's automated driving systems developer and integrator, and the University of Connecticut back in March of 2020 to develop and deploy the first automated heavy-duty transit buses in North America. So I think these vehicles are actually going into the manufacturing line. It was either last week or this week, but there'll be 3 of them. They'll be battery electric. This is their New Flyer prototype, so that's what it'll end up looking like. These should be level 4, I say level 4 automated vehicles that operate, autonomously within their operational design domain. There will be a safety driver behind the wheel at all times, and also who will be, operating the vehicle and outside the ODD. And again, we're focusing on platooning and precision docking, where I was talking about those ADA accessibility benefits. So, Connecticut DOT has the CT Fast Track. It's a fully dedicated 9.3 mile fixed guideway between Hartford and New Britain in the suburbs, and they run express bus service very, very frequently, multiple routes along this guideway. And every station has platform boarding. They do run a lot of 60-footers on this route, doing a precise docking maneuver, even with rub rails and other aids. It's very difficult for a human to do over and over and over again. So it's a place we certainly see automation providing significant benefit in reducing the number of ADA non-compliant docking maneuvers. There are 5 signalized intersections where we'll have, I think it's IBI group we've got on our team on a separate project doing I guess now it'll be CV to X integration to produce SPAT and MAP data for these vehicles and provide, there'll also be radar units supplied by Robotic Research that provide blind spot awareness from oncoming traffic. So only the Hartford Loop will require mixed traffic operations. And again, they're not designing these vehicles. They're not designing the ADS to be able to operate autonomously in that mixed traffic loop. Just given budget and timeline constraints, we focused, specifically on the fast track itself. And then getting to and from the depot will also be a human operator. So what we've learned through this process is, these are all FBMSS compliant, Altoona tested transit buses. that require significant engineering work in terms of the ADS integration to integrate all the sensors, cameras, the telecommunications equipment, and then programming for a specific use case. This is not at this stage something that scales particularly easily. Every deployment is going to involve a lot of customization. Unlike a lot of the low-speed shuttle deployments, which agencies are procuring or leasing effectively as commercial off-the-shelf equipment, what they get is what's developed. This is all being developed with specifications. The technology is being developed with specifications specifically to meet Connecticut DOT's. So setting performance and safety standards. This is the first time anyone's really going through this with a transit vehicle. So it's been a challenge. How do you train your workforce? We do anticipate that even reaching a level 3 or level 4 system, or sorry, with a level 3 you would expect a driver to be able to have to take over at various points. But even with an L4 system, you expect a driver to be there for operating conditions outside the ODD. There are, big labor questions in terms of
Seems Nathaniel might be having some technical issues. Let's keep moving, and hopefully we can circle back so we can wrap up some of his talking points. So don't forget to add your Q&A. And next up is Dave Rubin. He is the head of public policy research at Cruise.
Cool. Thanks, Emily. I hope everybody can hear me all right.
Loud and clear.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Let me share my screen here. Very good. Okay, we good to go? Looks like I'm presenting here. Perfect. All right. So thanks for the introduction, Emily. Really excited to be able to talk to you all about Cruise today and the work that we're doing for developing our shared electric and fully autonomous vehicle fleet based in San Francisco, and looking to develop a ride-hailing as well as delivery service for the public. No presentation on the future of autonomy and transportation would be complete without some sobering statistics about transportation today. That being said, I'm sure you all are pretty well steeped in the details here, so let me just keep it pretty high level. We all know that the transportation system today is pretty broken, be it from a road safety perspective, with 38,000 plus lives lost on American roads last year, and of course a precipitous jump because of reckless and dangerous driving during the pandemic, be it from an accessibility and equity and environmental justice lens, as well as from a sustainability and emissions lens. There's a lot of issues today, and we need to work quickly and fastidiously to, I think, redesign and redeploy transportation solutions to address all of these challenges. And for the purposes of the environmental component, and I think pretty salient for this discussion, before we do irrevocable damage to our environment. Which is why I'm pretty excited about the work that we're doing at Cruise. So for those of you who may not be familiar with us, we are a self-driving car company founded in 2013 and based in San Francisco. We've got about 150, 160 test vehicles on the road right now in San Francisco, as well as a really exciting delivery pilot that we're advancing with Walmart in Phoenix. We are also majority owned by General Motors, hence the Chevy Bolt that you can see here on the screen. But we're really fundamentally driven by these three principles that I've laid out here on the left-hand side. Number one is safer self-driving. The second is a zero-emission vehicle platform, specifically all electric, as you can see again here by the Bolt. And as I'll cover at the end of my presentation, our future vehicle called the Cruise Origin, and a vehicle that is powered by renewable energy in California as well. And then also fundamental to our vision for the future of transportation is shared, specifically the fact that we are not selling a car for the public to purchase. We are offering a ride-sharing service for the public to share in and enjoy. But to dive into a few more of these details here, because I think there's some really unique elements and facets of fleet management, specifically AV fleet management, that present some unique value adds to our sustainability and environmental goals. The first kind of top level one, I would say, is really our fleet's ability to expand and democratize the public's access to cleaner transportation. We really view this as kind of a fundamental driver for our technology, for our vision for future service, in such a way that we will be able to provide the public with access to an electric vehicle and cleaner miles, regardless of whether an individual can own an EV, charge an EV, or purchase one, right? These are, of course, historic challenges that we faced in our push towards greater electrification. Be it from a cost perspective for buying an electric vehicle, or as we push towards greater adoption of EVs amongst middle and lower income households. Obviously, charger distributions and availability, specifically for dense urban cores and multi-unit dwellings, is a huge barrier, right? And so, as a fleet, our ability to sort of solve for those issues by providing our vehicles as a service is pretty exciting, especially when you think about AVs as not just providing a safer mile, but also in this case, a cleaner mile. But we're also investing pretty heavily in charging infrastructure on the back end to be able to provide this service. Happy to get into this during Q&A, but for a sense of scale, we're already at about 30% of all DC fast chargers in San Francisco that we own and operate, and that's just to support our R&D fleet. Those needs will rise precipitously as we approach commercialization scale. But beyond some of the immediate access benefits that we've been talking about, and I think this actually speaks pretty well to Yeganeh's presentation and research, there's a number of these really exciting ancillary benefits that automation and fleet management can present in terms of our environmental goals as well. So the top line one, I would say, is the ability for crews to more efficiently route and plan and drive in terms of where our vehicles go and how they get there. So I think a good analogy would be looking at the way that our vehicles drive compared to today's transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, which have human drivers. It's very difficult for Uber and Lyft to get their drivers to drive perhaps more efficiently. One reason is there's no incentive for Uber and Lyft to reduce the amount of fuel consumption that their drivers have. That's on the driver's sort of balance sheet. In contrast, that's something that Cruise manages ourselves. But the other component here too is that those drivers are, of course, decentralized, right? And it's difficult to coordinate strategies across those individuals. It's fundamental human error, right? Human issue. In contrast, we're able to do really exciting things like, for example, in San Francisco, obviously there's a lot of hills, right? A great way for us to reduce our total energy use is to select routes and paths that avoid steeper grades. We're able to do that because we can pre-plan our routes. At the same time, we can also do really efficient things like strategic charging for our fleet. For example, taking advantage of periods on the grid when there are more renewables being generated, or to strategically in the future, being able to plug in to support bidirectional charging and really respond to price signals or to support broader grid resiliency, both in California and of course in other markets as well. And then one additional element that I think is super cool for this conversation, and which I'll touch on in the next slide, is Cruise's ability to purchase energy at a fleet-wide scale. And that facet allowed us to make a commitment to go fully renewable with our energy starting in 2019 through a regulatory regime called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard. And we're super proud to be the first and to date only AV player to make that commitment. And I'm excited to share kind of the next iteration of that renewable commitment through a program that we launched earlier this year called Farm to Fleet. So to maintain that renewable commitment, we have historically been buying renewable energy credits, matching the amount of electricity that we use to charge our vehicles. We're buying an associated number of RECs to make up for that and to represent the sort of that commitment across the board for fully renewable power. Well, we realized that we were being, for lack of a better word, sort of decentralized or less efficient with the way that we were purchasing that energy, and recognized that we could actually be way more impactful and strategic and deliberate with the way that we were buying that energy by finding partners out in the world that actually shared our vision for more sustainable transportation. And because of the fact that we manage all of our refueling and charging activities ourselves, we were able to start 2 new commercial partnerships with family-owned farms in the Central Valley, specifically 2 farms, Sundale Vineyards and Moonlight, who had been investing in solar power. They had been generating RECs themselves and wanted to find partners out there who shared their vision for more sustainable agriculture, more sustainable transportation. And we saw some really great synergies. And so we started this partnership where we are now sourcing our energy directly from these farms. Again, a relationship that wouldn't be possible if we weren't centrally managed and coordinated in terms of how we're charging our AVs. And so to put kind of a unique fine point on it, not only are our vehicles being powered by solar panels nestled amongst vineyards in the Central Valley, but on top of that, every mile that we now drive in California goes towards generating non-farm income for family-owned businesses. And we just think that's an incredible contribution to how we think about how future fleets can sort of lead the way in creative sustainability and decarbonization projects. And we're really excited for what that presents at scale as well. I've got a little stat here at the bottom. We ran some numbers and found that if the rest of the ride-hailing sector in the state of California followed our lead by 2040, went fully electric and fully renewable, we could achieve roughly 13.5 million tons of CO2 reduction per year compared to a baseline scenario. And at the same time, generate upwards of about $100 million in non-farm income for businesses like Sundale Vineyards and Moonlight simply by selling their RECs to us, which is super exciting. But I think it's also important to note that while there are tremendous opportunities in the future generated by these shared autonomous and electric vehicle fleets, it bears note what good they can do today. So I wanted to touch briefly on some work that we've been doing since April 2020. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and the associated lockdowns, there was a tremendous need across the US and specifically in San Francisco for food delivery. Many families, specifically low-income households and communities, were experiencing tremendous challenges around hunger and the availability to access food. And so in April of last year, we started partnering with 2 local nonprofits, San Francisco New Deal and the SF Marin Food Bank, to start a delivery partnership that we've called Cruise for Good, where we are picking up food from these 2 providers and delivering them directly to food insecure families and households in the Bay Area, specifically in San Francisco. As you can see on the right, since April of last year, we've been able to deliver 1.8 million meals over that time, over 80% of which have been to low-income zip codes and households, which we're tremendously proud of. And again, for the purposes of today's conversation, there's also a unique environmental benefit here as well. If you consider a counterfactual where those deliveries would have been done in gas-powered cars, we are doing them in renewable EVs, right? And so because of the simple fact that that's how we power our cars, we've offset over 85 metric tons of CO2 in delivery of those 1.8 million meals simply by how we power our fleet and deciding to lead this partnership. And so I'll conclude on this last slide here, just talking about the work that we're doing to develop our next generation vehicle called the Cruise Origin. This is sort of the cornerstone of how we're envisioning deploying our fleet in the future. We've developed this vehicle in close partnership with General Motors as well as Honda. And it's going to be made in the US, contributing to thousands of union jobs at Factory Zero, which is GM's first fully electric production facility. And we really view this as sort of driving innovation and reimagination of the transportation landscape into the future. It has no steering wheel, no pedal. You can kind of see in the photo at the bottom left that there's campfire seating as well. And because of the modularity of this car, we've been able to very excitedly announce a wheelchair accessible variant, which again, you can see in the bottom left, as well as some cargo designs that allow for the vehicle to moonlight as a delivery service as well. And then very quickly in the course of a day, go back to passenger service. So I'll leave it there, close out on that. Very excited to kind of chat about this in the Q&A today. And thanks everybody for your time.
Thanks, Dave. I do believe Nathaniel's back with us. You had, I think, one more slide to wrap us up before we dive into our Q&A. Are you there, Nathaniel? Great, we can see your screen. We cannot hear you, though. Matthew or Alyssa, do you want to confirm that Nathaniel has speaking ability? All right, Nathaniel, I'm not sure if your audio is not working. We do see your screen. Perhaps we should just move on to our Q&A, and then any additional points you'd like to make, we can make it during that. Yeganeh and Dave, do you want to turn your cameras back on? Okay, great. So a couple of questions came in. I guess let's get started on that. And Dave, the first one came to you. Given your electric infrastructure needs, what are you considering when expanding to a new location? So if you want to elaborate on EV infrastructure a little bit there.
Sure, yeah, great question. So there's a lot wrapped into how we think about market launch, and especially when it comes to the electric infrastructure needed to power our fleet. So as I noted, 30% of all DC fast chargers in San Francisco is what we've currently built out. When we look at new markets, I think there's two main factors at play. The first is the capital expenditure required to build the chargers themselves. And then the second component is sort of our own operational expenses, specifically what are the electricity rates, for example? Are there incentives or preferential electricity rates in place that allow us to maintain our renewable commitments in a way that is still economically feasible for our fleet? And so as we evaluate new market entry, we definitely like to see, obviously active discussion amongst regulators and policymakers on fleet electrification. I think that's really critical, not just for light duty fleets like us, but of course, fleets that like Nathaniel is working with, for example, in the medium and heavy duty space, as well as creative partnership opportunities, to be honest. There's a lot of work that's being done right now to explore how we can get better utilization out of chargers. And the reality is that realistically and optimistically, publicly available DC fast chargers are at most tapping out to 15-20% utilization. right? As a centrally managed fleet, we can actually coordinate to support greater utilization at those chargers by doing things like having our vehicles go in during overnight periods where we won't conflict with public charging. But like for example, who's going to go to a DC fast charger in downtown San Francisco at 1 in the morning, right? Very few individuals will. That's a time when crews can come in, support the EV charging station owner to increase their revenue, and at the same time maximize the amount of miles that are being delivered to the public. So once again, it's the rate making process, it's charging infrastructure discussions, as well as what are creative partnerships that we can create with industry at the same time.
Okay, and just real quick, are the cruise and EV infrastructure chargers open to the public, or are they for only the cruise fleet?
Right now, they're for the cruise fleet because we co-locate things like cleaning of sensors and calibration, but it's certainly something that we're open to in the future and looking to actually expand. Is publicly available as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeganeh, I had a question for you. In one of your slides, at the end, you talked about the need for government help for quick adoption. Could you elaborate on what that might look like as a state policymaker, or even at the local and federal levels, what that might look like?
So sure. So I think it's great that we are hearing this technology making advances and what will be more of a reality maybe 5 years, 10 years down the road. But transportation agencies, which I used to be a part of, state agencies, I used to work closely with them. They day in, day out, they work on short-term plans, medium-term plans, incorporating action items, tangible action items that could help not only the users of these technologies, rather, the broader population would be very helpful. I actually related to what you asked me. I see a question in the Q&A about these technologies, and we're not talking about the sophisticated technologies. We're talking about low-level automation technologies being underutilized. So education could be a huge part of this from the state side, from the policymakers. Why are we not using these technologies that are available to us? Because we don't know how to. We don't know the benefits. The benefits are not being communicated with the public. So they have no real sense of, by using these technologies beyond their own safety, how much, they can contribute to the well-being of the society. And, the list can go on and on. But from the investment perspective, the state agencies can come up with tangible action items as to what to do. I've talked briefly about the locational or geographic target adoption and incentivization. That could be another one. That could be, like, for example, in the state of Pennsylvania, we could do a specific study using the data from the state of Pennsylvania to see what works there, what are the problems, and what patterns we are seeing and how we could address those. So let me just stop here.
No, that's great. I think, a lot of times it always comes back to more public education and engaging with our customers and, the residents of the Commonwealth. So, no, that was great.
Absolutely.
Nathaniel, we have you back, and hopefully we're at least on the screen there. So that's great. So you did leave off around workforce. So I just, one of the questions that came to mind when you were speaking was, how was the training related to the drivers of the transit buses, or was that difficult to get folks interested or, potentially volunteering for those roles?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. I think when it logged me back and wrecked my permissions, I had to go fix that. So the last slide I was going to show you was actually the timeline of where we are in this project. The buses are going into the line right now for manufacturing. The ADS equipment integration will come after that. We're talking about the training plan right now and beginning to engage. By we, I mean Connecticut Department of Transportation. Engage the operator and start to figure out what that training is going to look like, because it's something that New Flyer and Robotic Research have never done before for a 40-foot, automated bus. So they're working on that themselves. Volpe has actually engaged us, seeing a potential opportunity to research various training methodologies. And so we're talking with them about participating in the project from that vantage point. Training will probably occur. I think we've got it scheduled for, I want to say late summer, mid to late summer next year. And deployment is scheduled for Q4 of 2022. So we're looking at doing dry runs, I think in October, and then deployment in November, December. Making sure we're ready to go. And if we have to push things because we're not quite ready, it is what it is. But that's the plan right now, and everything is still more or less going according to schedule.
That sounds great. We do have one question in the chat for you specifically. Have you documented any of the unique challenges or risks resulting from using electric buses for the fast track project?
So we've reduced the risk for this particular project by Connecticut Department of Transportation has decided not to replace any existing vehicles or existing bus blocks with these vehicles. So we are not going to be beholden to the schedule. They do have some very short blocks of 4 or 5 hours where we're confident, even with the dead of winter, that the vehicles would be able to maintain their regular duty cycle, that there wouldn't be an issue. The biggest challenge is the CT Fast Track has a speed limit of 40 miles per hour, and drivers are sometimes go. They're trying to make the time to maintain their schedule, but really it's supposed to be 40 miles an hour. And the engineering associated with that, you have to go with higher grade LiDAR units. The actuation, steering actuation gets more challenging. The braking actuation gets more challenging to be able to maintain that. But we are going to hit 40. That's an expectation of the project. Whether it maintains that is to be determined. So if we do have to, do a regular operations at 35 or maybe even a little bit lower than that, we're not going to impact any schedule concerns. And the hope is over time, the technology evolves to where we can, and the expectation is that it will evolve to where they can reliably plug this into existing service and not have to necessarily completely supplement it.
Great. Dave, I had a question about your cruise origin. Do you think the not having a steering wheel and the traditional pieces of a vehicle, kind of circling back to public outreach and education, do you think that's going to be a hindrance for public adoption?
So I think it
With
brings
that
up a really
sigh,
good
it's
point.
already telling you.
I think it brings up a good point though, right? Which is we are this is going to sound trite, so I apologize in advance. We are in a tech race, but we are also in a trust race, right? And we are working on pretty advanced technology that in some ways is sort of reflective of the moonshot, right? Where this is sort of the first demonstrable application of artificial intelligence, and it's taking place in a way that is highly visible and frankly will likely generate questions for the public. Our hope is that through an unwavering commitment to safety, as well as exactly what you brought up, which is outreach and education and engagement with the public, we'll be able to demonstrate that that we're taking the right steps to show that we are safer than a human driver fundamentally. And that comes down to communicating the milestones and achievements that we've made, as well as showing through pilot opportunities, through iterative rollout regimes, that we can work to provide a service to the public that is ultimately safer. And so, in short, is it going to be a hurdle? I think it will be an opportunity to educate and bring members of the public along with us. it's going to be a change for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but one that we're excited about.
That's great. And Yeganeh, I want to circle back with you on the outreach, the government influence, and then the public education. And one of the points that you made really hit me was if we have some of these low automation rather, amenities in our vehicles, but we're not utilizing them properly. I guess my question is, how quickly would we see these reductions in emissions and fuel savings if we were just able to switch it on or utilize our platform as a government entity to educate the public? How quickly do you think we would see the impact to the public?
Well, the truth of the matter is that we have been seeing the impacts. I mean,
Okay, great.
Like 1% using it is better than none, right? So 10% is better than 0. So we have been seeing the impacts, and I've been following the data and updating our models for the past 7 years, and the impact has been consistently increasing. Maybe not at the pace that we would like it to, but that's the good news. The downside, I mean, this is probably one opportunity for me to kind of voice my opinion, where I'm sure like there are many decision makers sitting in the room saying, it's amazing to be excited about the new technologies and what they will bring to us in the future. But at the same time, let us all not forget about this messy world. I refer to it as a messy world because it's of the mixed fleet of the people who will not be able to afford some of these services that or some of these technologies that we're coming up with, but yet they are from the equity perspective, which is something that I know PennDOT is really passionate about. We owe it to them to educate them how they can work, how we all can work together in terms of driving and decision making and driving behavior to get the best possible outcome for if not like safety will always be number one priority, but educating them that by using these technologies effectively, we can help the environment. We can make it a better world. So this is my plea to everyone to please not forget the next 5 years and 10 years, and those who are not going to be fortunate enough to use these new technologies, but they still deserve to see the benefits and know about the benefits and get educated about these benefits, and not to think that, oh, this is not for us, this is not for me. Good for someone who's using the technology. What am I getting out of this? And Dave mentioned trust. Yes, this is a trust race. Trust in those who are using these systems. Trust from those who will not soon be using these technologies. But we still need to work on that as well.
Well, I think those are great words to end this panel on, building trust and always considering equity as part of our progress here. So I just want to thank our panelists here. I really enjoyed our conversation and how you were talking about all the projects and research that you're working on. We are now going to exit our presentation mode for all the audience members and go back into the conference room where you'll have the next 15 minutes to chat with other attendees. I know I'll be hopping over there, and hopefully our panelists will be able to join. When you're ready to move to the next breakout session, go to the top left of your screen and open the drop down to select the session you would like to attend. The next sessions available today are the cybersecurity breakout and the public education breakout. So when you're ready, please choose either of these sessions to attend. And we can't wait to continue this conversation. So thank you all, and I'll see you over in the, the conference room area.
Thank you.